If you haven't read the first Percy Jackson book, The Lightning Thief, and you're trying to watch the show going in blind, please don't watch the rest of this video. There's going to be a lot of spoilers. A few people in the comments of my previous video have been bringing up the point that the show is making it too obvious who the thief is in the end, or that the show isn't integrating the thief into the plot of the show enough to make it more of a betrayal at the end. And I have two things I want to say on this subject. Okay, this is the last warning to the people who have not read the book and want to go into the show blind. I will be saying who the Lightning Thief is within the next few seconds, so please scroll up, maybe save it, come back later, but don't watch this. First of all, the person who ends up being the thief, Luke, isn't actually that present in the first book. It's Percy, Annabeth, and Grover who go on their quest, and they go on it alone. I think the main reason a lot of book readers are feeling like we're lacking Luke's presence in the show is because the training was very brushed over. We essentially got half an hour's worth of time of Luke and Percy bonding and becoming very close friends in the training session, and then that was it, and then they went on the quest. And I do get wanting more of Luke and Percy bonding, but more than anything I do especially get wanting more of Luke and Annabeth, because we really didn't see much of them other than a brief conversation. And where the betrayal for Percy is very bad, I've always felt that Annabeth's betrayal from Luke is much worse. But on another vein, I can also understand why the show chose to only focus so little on the training, because the creators were essentially given a set number of episodes that they had to fill the time with, and it's very clear that they wanted to spend the majority of the time on the quest, which we can't really fault them for because the quest is the best part. And so I do understand why they cut the training short. I do wish we could have seen more of the character developments with Luke and Percy and Annabeth, but I get why they did it. But once Percy, Annabeth, and Grover leave on the quest, Luke is very much not present in the narrative. They speak about him, and I do believe they actually do iris message him at one point, and that does happen in the show. I may be misremembering though, so correct me if I am. And I think it especially feels like Luke as a character is lacking in the show because he is so present in the later books and such a prominent figure. But he really isn't that present in The Lightning Thief. But because we expect him to be there, we're annoyed that he isn't there. And going back to the first point I made where some people are saying that it's too obvious that Luke is the villain, I do think this is more a case of looking for signs and then so suddenly seeing those signs. If you are actively looking for a specific something, then you are more likely to find it than if you weren't looking for anything in particular. And so a lot of viewers who are going in blind are still suspicious of Grover especially. They're suspicious of Annabeth, they're suspicious of Ares, they're suspicious of even Chiron. And yes, some may as well be suspicious of Luke, but that is not exclusive to everyone. We know that Luke is the Lightning Thief. And so when they bring up Luke's backstory and it's very tragic and we see that he's angry at his dads and angry at the gods, we think, well, they're just telling us that he's the Lightning Thief. But I don't think that's what they're doing. If anything, they might be trying to make up for the fact that they couldn't have the bonding with Luke in the earlier episodes. I do think it also helps mirroring Percy in a way, because at the beginning of the show, Percy is incredibly mad at the gods, especially his father, for neglecting him his whole life and for not helping his mother. And though at this stage Percy is a bit more Team Poseidon, that doesn't mean he's still completely forgiving of the gods, and so he can understand Luke's perspective. And the main reason I think this all comes across as them giving too much away about Luke is because they are telling rather than showing. And this is something that me, an adult viewer, finds a criticism, but it's not something that I'm completely faulting the show for. Because they're not just aiming for me, they're aiming for middle school children who sometimes need to be told what's happening. But I do think in particular with Luke being the Lightning Thief, if you want to see the signs that he is the thief, you are going to see those signs. There are viewers going in blind who believe that Grover is the Lightning Thief, and there are very obvious signs that he could be. That entire scene with Ares could have been Grover trying to sway Ares into thinking that someone else was the Lightning Thief. When he goes back to Annabeth and Percy and he tells them it was Clarisse who's the Lightning Thief, that could have been him trying to manipulate them. Obviously we know that Grover isn't the Lightning Thief, but there are also signs that other characters are, rather than just Luke. And so I don't think it's that obvious that Luke is the Lightning Thief. I think it will come as a surprise, and I think the betrayal will be the same level that it was in the book. I think overall this is a show that we had such high expectations for that we're inevitably going to be disappointed by certain aspects of it. And yes, there are some things that do need improvement. The pacing, the fade to black, and slightly showing not telling, but again, I'm a little bit on the fence about that because it is aimed at middle schoolers. But I think if we go into watching the show a bit more forgiving, then we're going to enjoy it a lot more. But yeah, let me know what you guys think.